Hey, if you'd like to earn CEUs for this webinar, join the Safeopedia community at the link in the description below. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Safeopedia webinar. My name is Samantha, and I am here to welcome you in, wish you a good morning, a good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I want to thank all of you for being here to support our EH&S professionals, our operational folks, and any safety-minded individuals with free safety information, tools, and education. I'd like to extend a huge thank you to all of you for keeping our workplaces safe. Today, we are proud to present heat stress strategies and solutions for a safer workplace, sweet relief for the hot and bothered. This webinar is being made possible today by Ergodyne, a preferred manufacturer member of AD Safety Network. AD, together we win. Today, we are welcoming in Lexi Engelbart. And today, Lexi is going to help you stay ahead of the industry developments to ensure that you know how to address heat stress challenges head on to keep you safe in and outside of the workplace. I'm very excited to have you all sit back and relax and enjoy this webinar. With that, Lexi, let's jump into it.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Lexi Engelbart, and I am the Product Development Manager at Ergodyne over our heat stress categories. So my role at Ergodyne is really to get with groups like yourself, listen, understand some of the issues that you're facing in regards to heat stress, and then help come up with solutions. I'm also a resource for training and education, which is what we're here to talk about today. So if you were with me last year for this training, this slide will look quite familiar. Now I've updated it to say it's official. 2024 was the world's warmest year on record. I'm anticipating I'm going to update this slide deck next year for 2025 as well. Point being, we don't anticipate this trend going anywhere anytime soon. So we've been keeping track of weather and climate for about 150 years. 2024 was the world's warmest year in that record keeping. So over a 12-year period in the US, we've reported close to 500 workplace deaths due to exposure of high heat. Because most of these occur in the summer, that math is well over a death a week. Even more alarmingly, this number is grossly underestimated. So these are the numbers that are reported out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics here in the US. Typically, what we see happening, heat illness actually interferes with your cognitive ability. So people start making more mistakes due to the high heat. That won't always go down as a heat-related illness. If you get run over by a vehicle, crash it, I start feeling sick at work. I feel a little dizzy, a little nauseous. I'm just going to head home and, kind of sleep it off. We have people fainting while they're driving. We have people that get all the way home and then they have a heart attack, cardiac issue. So we have workers listed as dying from natural causes, such as heart attacks or going home and suffering from the heat, getting sick and dying there. And it's not always counted as work related. So we know that these are the numbers that are reported. However, unfortunately, these are much, much lower than reality. So as far as standards go, reminder that there is not yet a federal standard. However, 2024 was a really monumental year as far as progress goes. So as things stand today, what does OSHA require when it comes to heat stress? The answer is, it depends. Of course, it's not an easy answer. It depends on whether you live in a state that falls under federal OSHA jurisdiction or you live in a state plan state. So there is not a specific heat stress regulation that exists at that federal level right now, but there is a ton of activity towards that, which I will speak on in a moment. So as far as state plans go, I would encourage everyone on the call to look up if the state that you reside in, or maybe for our Canadian folks on the call, if your Providence has a plan, just check and see what coverage that includes. So Minnesota, where Ergodyne and myself are based out of, we have a state plan. So that would cover our private and state local government workplaces. Some states in the US have plans that only cover state and local government workers. Some states have nothing. So therefore, that would be following the federal OSHA General Duty Clause, which basically says employers have to protect their workers from risks. So on this slide here, you might recognize this campaign. This is California's heat stress standard, most known as Cal OSHA. So water, rest, and shade campaign. The key components of this long-running campaign are obviously water, rest, and shade. But this was really the first move towards recognizing the importance of awareness, training, having that access to water, acclimatization, and more. So I mentioned activity towards a heat stress federal standard. This really kicked off when OSHA launched their National Emphasis Program. The NEP is how we refer to it, in April of 2022. So these NEPs run for 3 years. This one was actually set to expire last month, but it was renewed for another year, so it will now expire in 2026. So why does OSHA launch national emphasis programs? Really, it's a fact-finding mission. They are interviewing workers, reviewing emergency room logs, and they're targeting industries that have high numbers of incidents and fatalities. So, primarily we talk about heat stress when it comes to construction. However, we have people working indoors as well, all year long in manufacturing, warehousing, and distribution. They're experiencing heat stress all year long. So I encourage everyone to try to think about heat stress in an indoor context as well. So per the NEP, OSHA will initiate inspections on days when the National Weather Service has announced a heat warning or advisory for the local area. Another NEP that is active and that does make mention of heat stress hazards is the Warehousing and Distribution Center Operations NEP. So warehousing and distribution centers experience a higher injury and illness rate compared to private industries overall. So other industries that are impacted would include mail and postal processing, parcel delivery, courier services. Those all have high injury rates as well. So a big question that we get asked, okay, well, with this NEP being put in place, are these inspections actually happening? These numbers speak for themselves. 3 years before that NEP was launched, a little over 700 heat-related inspections. From April of 2022 to January of 25, so not even a full 3 years, over 7,000 heat-related inspections. OSHA is serious about this. They are issuing citations. They are writing hazard alert letters. And nearly 1,400 workers have been removed from heat hazards, which is wonderful. So I mentioned that 2024 was a monumental year as far as progress goes towards a federal standard. So this is not an OSHA standard, but in February of 24, you might recognize these entities. ANSI and ASSP published their A10.50 standard for heat stress management. So if you're not familiar, A10 is a set of standards that are specific to construction and demolition operations. So things like there's scaffolding standards and hearing loss prevention standards, just to name a few. So this is a voluntary standard. However, as I said, we recognize these names, ANSI and ASSP. They are recognized and referenced as a best practice. So for example, if OSHA were to go do an inspection on a job site, employer doesn't have a heat stress plan in place. Hey, my state doesn't fall under a state plan state. There's not a federal rule yet. I don't even know where to start. OSHA could reference this plan as to an employer to avoid a citation. So basically, this A10.50 provides specific means and methods for the prevention of heat illness and how to manage heat stress. So it gives specific examples of engineering controls to pull, administrative controls we can pull, and specifically recommends cooling PPE. So again, some more progress towards that federal standard. OSHA published their proposed heat stress rule in late 2024. This has gotten a ton of support from the public, as you can see, over 27,000 comments received. I did not read through all 27,000 comments. However, I read through several hundred and ultimately overarching support for some sort of heat stress standard. And a lot of these comments were coming directly from people on the front line. Hey, I've experienced heat stress. I wish that there was something in place. I've seen my coworkers experience this. I've seen a family member experience this. Heat stress doesn't just affect workers. Heat stress is one of those risks and one of those issues that affects all of us in our day-to-day lives. So I've just highlighted a couple of key words that are in this proposed rule that would be great things to know. So what this standard does is gives specific examples of how to mitigate heat stress, such as providing break areas for outdoor workers, giving those workers some shade. So we have tents in our lineup here at Ergodyne. That would be a great option to help give those outdoor workers a bit of a shady break. This standard also talks about the importance of airflow and fans. Again, we talk so frequently about heat stress in an outdoor context. What's the temperature outside? It's humid outside. But we have a lot of people working indoors around, hot ovens, hot machinery, in foundries. So getting that air movement increased with fans is really, really crucial. This proposed standard also talks about cooling PPE. That is wonderful to hear because we know that that is a proven solution. And no surprise to anybody, this proposed rule also mentions hydrations and electrolytes. So reality is a federally mandated heat stress standard in the US may not happen anytime soon, but regulation should never be the reason we're protecting workers. Employers don't need a federal rule to tell them that heat stress is dangerous or that simple, proven solutions can save lives. So next steps for this proposed standard, there is an informal hearing that OSHA is holding on this proposed rulemaking next month in June. So I will be attending that and I am going to be right there waiting to see what happens. So what does implementation of this sort of standard expect to yield out? We get asked so frequently from, people on the front lines, safety professionals, asking to quantify how heat mitigation programs, as well as cooling PPE, can increase productivity, decrease incidents and fatalities, and ultimately what we are at risk of losing if we don't continue to push forward heat stress mitigation and safety management programs. So according to the International Safety Equipment Association, ISEA, with an effective heat stress management program, worker compensation costs can be reduced by 50%, and heat stress illness incidents can be reduced by 90%. Ultimately, we're looking for 100%, but hey, 90%, that is a passing grade for sure, and that is much, much better than doing nothing. Even more alarmingly, according to the Occupational Health and Safety, the risk of heat stress could cut 2.2% of global working hours by 2030, which is the equivalent of the output of 80 million full-time jobs. This would be felt worldwide economically. So the time to act is now. Back to federal efforts, more than anything, OSHA just wants to see that employers are making a good faith effort to protect their workers, including having a written prevention plan. So these 5 key points from OSHA, these are not going to be changing from their proposed rule. Step 1, what we're doing here today, training and educating. So, what does heat stress look like in me? What does it look like in others? What do some of those signs and symptoms look like? I'll touch on that in a little while here. Step 2 of a good program is monitoring. So we say weather and workplace conditions. Again, let's take that heat stress context, bring it indoors. There are so many industries that work indoors without climate control, and heat stress is a year-round concern for them. So a tool of measurement that is specifically referenced in the A1050 standard, as well as OSHA's proposed standard, is to utilize the wet bulb globe temperature, WBGT. This way of measuring takes into account humidity, heat from the sun, wind speed, as well as the actual ambient air temperature. So we all know that 90 degrees feels very different in Florida than it does in Arizona. Number 3 would be having that heat hazard assessment conducted. So again, it's identifying those things that are present on a job site that actually would exacerbate heat stress. So there's a lot of unique complexities of different jobs and environments, and we just need to know, how effectively we can prevent heat stress from happening. We can't always, remove that machinery, but we have to at least acknowledge this is part of the thing causing heat stress. Number 4, implementing heat illness prevention strategies. So that's putting things in place like reducing worker exposures to heat stress conditions, establishing an acclimatization program to help workers adapt to working in the high heat. I'm based out of Minnesota. Next week, if I was to go work down in Florida, my body would not be used to that. What we see happening most frequently, heat illnesses and fatalities happen within the first week of workers on the job. Their bodies are not used to it. They're just going 100% into work on day 1, which their bodies are not used to. Number 5, this one's pretty self-explanatory. We need to have a plan in place for a medical emergency. So the key to preventing injuries or worse, fatalities, is planning. Be aware of the risks, monitor the weather and workplace, have tailgate talks often, especially in the summer months, and definitely remind workers about the importance of taking care of themselves. So, how does heat stress happen? Our body is really good at thermal regulating itself. It loves to be at that sweet spot of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. So once our body starts creeping up to 99.7 degrees Fahrenheit or 37.6 degrees Celsius, that is when heat stress will begin to affect the body. Once we reach 104 degrees or 40 degrees Celsius, severe illness can occur. 30 minutes at this level can cause cellular damage to the brain. This is a medical emergency. Paramedics must be called. So what does heat stress look like? Again, heat stress, it affects me, it affects workers, it affects your family members. This is a really great training just to know. I think we've all probably experienced heat stress in some form or fashion at some point in our lives. And we might not have always known that it was happening to us. So what do some of those symptoms and those treatments look like? So heat rash, like it sounds, our bodies can start to get itchy blisters because our sweat glands are actually clogged. So make sure we're keeping the skin dry. We're always trying to get that sweat to evaporate as quickly off of our skin as possible and get that worker moved to a cool spot to rest. Next down in severity, heat cramps. Again, kind of like it sounds, our muscles will start to tighten and spasm because our salt and moisture levels are depleted. Make sure we're drinking lots and lots and lots of fluids. That means water and electrolytes, not, energy drinks, Red Bull, coffee, that sort of thing. So let's make sure we get that worker to a cool area to rest. Apply something cool like a cooling towel or a cooling vest and make sure we're rehydrating. Heat exhaustion. So with extended time in the heat and poor hydration comes heat exhaustion. So that's when we can start to feel a little dizzy. We start seeing that tunnel vision, it's blacking out. And we start to feel sick. We need to act fast in this stage because this can very quickly advance into heat stroke. Again, I'm kind of saying all the same recipe here. Get to a cool spot to rest, drink lots of fluids, and make sure we're monitoring that worker. A lot of times, there is some shame associated with heat stress. Hey, toughen up, work through it. This would not be the same case if we got our hand caught in a machine or we got hit while we were on the job site. So there really should be no shame or embarrassment about saying, hey, I need to stop and take a break. Because lastly and most seriously is heat stroke. This qualifies as a medical emergency and we need to act fast. 30 minutes in this zone can cause brain damage, cellular damage, and even death. Call a paramedic immediately in this scenario and work to cool that affected person down in whatever way possible until paramedics arrive. So there are a couple sets of factors that can contribute to heat stress. First are going to be personal factors. You'll see them listed here. So workers at greatest risk of heat stress include those who are older, are overweight, have heart disease or high blood pressure, or take medications that may be affected by extreme heat. So, we are typically discussing, hey, boss, here's the medications that I'm on. So, this really is something workers have to take on themselves, educating themselves on what certain medications could be affected by extreme heat. Another contributing factor is dehydration. A dehydrated person may not be able to sweat fast enough to get that heat out of their body, which causes that temperature to rise. I also mentioned acclimatization. So inadequate tolerance or adaptation to our environment is a major factor. Definitely important for employers and employees to understand that inadequate acclimatization can endanger anyone exposed to conditions of heat. The second set of factors is going to be our environment. So basically things that are specific and present for your job that would exacerbate heat stress. So again, we talk about high temperatures in the direct sun with lots of humidity, but then we also move it indoors, not a ton of airflow. We have hot equipment that we're working around, and sometimes we're required to wear PPE that can actually add to our heat load on our body. So how do we prevent heat stress in our workplace? I think most of us are probably familiar with the hierarchy of controls, and that's a means of determining how to implement feasible and effective controls. So the idea behind the hierarchy is that the control methods at the top are the most effective, and the ones towards the bottom are slightly less effective. So as you can see, elimination and substitution are at the top, and while those are the most effective at reducing hazard, they also tend to be the most difficult to implement. It's pretty hard to implement out the weather or the sun. It's equally impossible to eliminate or substitute out ovens from a baking process or heat from a weld shop. So we're going to focus on the bottom three, as these are the most common controls used for combating heat stress and are generally used in combination with each other. So first up would be engineering controls. Examples of engineering controls for heat stress would be air conditioning, having fans to improve that airflow, using reflective shields to get radiant heat redirected away from workers, and then insulating, water vapor pressures or sealing steam leaks. Next on the hierarchy would be those administrative controls. So making sure workers are staying hydrated and making sure water is readily available to workers at all times. Try to schedule jobs with high heat exposure during cooler times of the day. Implement a buddy system so workers can keep an eye on each other. Make sure we're taking frequent breaks and adjusting our work rest break schedule as temperatures climb. As you can see on the screen here, another really easy indicator to check your hydration level is to monitor your urine output. So darker yellow means we're not hydrated. We want to be as clear as possible. So while it's the last line of defense in our hierarchy of controls, heat stress PPE should be part of the program solution. There are a ton of innovative solutions that can help combat heat, including cooling hats, cooling vests, fans, sunbrims, neck shades, light breathable clothing that's moisture wicking, and so much more. So with that, I'm going to get into our first major category, which filters into our comprehensive heat stress management tools. So OSHA actually recognizes the sun as a known hazard. So if someone were to get a major sunburn, sun poisoning, or something to that effect, and there is a recordable, such as a hospital visit OSHA could cite the employer for violation of the general duty clause. So we know how damaging the sun can be, and we have the numbers to prove it. 90% of cases of skin cancer were caused by sun exposure, and the annual cost of treating skin cancer in the US is over $8 billion. I would say sun protection in the US is a little bit lagging behind some other countries. Here, sunscreen is regulated by the FDA, so the introduction of new ingredients and formulations can be quite slow. We also tend to market sunscreen with sports and outdoor activities, whereas countries like Korea, sunscreen is actually a huge part of their anti-aging regimens and cosmetics. So what is the difference between SPF and UPF? So SPF is going to be that sun protective factor. That is going to be a metric that is used in sunscreens. Some sunscreens are not broad spectrum, which means they only protect against UVB rays. UPF ratings are going to be relevant to fabrics. So you might have seen UPF ratings on things before. This typically presents itself in clothing and textiles. So this is our lineup of our sunscreen here. We have two different formulas. We have a lotion formula in a few different sizes, a 32 ounce that's great for break rooms. Just take a pump as you're on your way out, an 8 ounce, and a personal 1.5 ounce. Far and away, the most popular option we have though is our spray. So this is just an easy to apply spray option. Limited scent. We don't, pack it with all the pina colada scents that sometimes make you feel like you're on vacation. But this has gone through robust testing, dermatologist tested, Hawaii Act 104 compliant. We have also tested these formulas to ASTM D120, which is going to be the lineman glove test. So this is a critical specification for lineman gloves, ensuring that the rubber insulating material does not deteriorate by using sunscreen. So we're happy to say that these formulas have passed that, and these are a great option. Again, sometimes skin protection and protection from the sun doesn't get thought of when we're talking about heat stress, but it is part of a robust heat stress management program. All right, next up, OSHA talks at length about providing shaded rest areas for workers. It's been proven ineffective that a rest break, if you're not actually cooling down, you might as well have not taken that rest break. So being in the shade and being able to cool down is really, really critical. We offer a ton of shade options, from smaller footprints like a 10 by 10 shelter to a larger 10 by 20 foot shelter for bigger crews. We also offer the option to logo tent canopies to personalize these to your company or job site. We have a ton of accessories that are compatible with our shelters, including sidewalls to contain your workstation, as well as anchor attachments, and our best-selling worksite umbrella. So this umbrella can be staked into the ground, used in a stand, or attached to your hitch mount. People really love the umbrella for, workers on the go. It's just me and my coworker in the truck. We don't need a huge tent. We just need a little spot for us to take our shaded rest break. Lastly, to the belle of the ball, our cooling PPE. So most commonly, I tend to hear from customers that, maybe their cooling stuff isn't working effectively. What I usually determine at the end of the conversation is that they're not using the correct technology that's best suited for their environment. So that just comes down to thoroughly vetting out a few screening questions. So start with that environment. What do those airflow levels look like? How high are the humidity levels? Are we low, moderate, or high? Then we move down to our uniform requirements. Do you have to wear a vapor barrier suit, a Tyvek suit, something that actually can add to your heat stress load? So often we hear, I have a company that has locations all across the country. I just need one option that I can get for everybody. So that can work. However, one tech fits all can result in substandard effectiveness. And I'll go through these technologies now, and which environments they're going to perform best in. So we will start with wet evaporative cooling. As it sounds, this is a wet evaporative process. This technology utilizes evaporation. So the crucial factor with this is going to be airflow. Evaporation also happens much easier when humidity conditions are low to moderate at best. While these products may still work in high humidity conditions, they may not feel as cold and they may need to be reactivated more frequently. This technology includes things such as polyvinyl alcohol towels, acrylic polymers, terry cloth, and performance moisture wicking fabrics. These products are easy to activate. Simply wet them with water or even sweat. Give them a twirl to get that airflow moving, and depending on your environment and the model you choose, cooling can last up to 4 hours. To reactivate, simply re-wet the product. So I would say this is by far our most popular technology in the lineup. We have 37 unique models in this technology with many more color and size iterations. A few of our best-selling models and most positively reviewed items are going to be our 6690 cooling arm sleeves. These can be worn wet or dry, and how they work is they're going to move sweat off the skin via evaporation. So our body has a built-in mechanism of cooling itself down. That is sweating. As that sweat evaporates off of our skin, it's going to take some heat with it. So these are going to be a really great option for wearing throughout the day for long lasting comfort. Again, easy activation depending on the item you're using. Put that in water for 2 to 5 minutes. No ice or refrigeration needed. I'll just highlight a couple things on here. I already mentioned the 6690 cooling arm sleeves. Two questions I get asked extremely frequently is, do you have a high vis option? Do you have an FR option? I do have both of these options in our lineup. So just launched this summer, a FR cooling towel, as well as an FR cooling neck gaiter. These are both rated to Cat 1 according to NFPA 70E. And then two of our best sellers by far are going to be our cooling towels and our cooling vest made of PVA, polyvinyl alcohol. Next up is dry evaporative technology. So cooling is a highly preference-based category for users. Some people do not want to feel wet when they are wearing cooling PPE, and we have a solution for that as well. So this is our dry evaporative technology. Being that this technology, again, utilizes evaporation, the crucial factor is going to be airflow. Essentially, this vest is faking out how our body naturally cools itself down by simulating sweating. So how it works, it's going to absorb the radiant heat from our body. This vest is filled with water. Once that vest starts feeling that heat, that water wants to escape and evaporate, and it's going to take some of that heat off of our body with us. So once again, being that airflow is crucial with this technology, we do need this to be the outermost layer, and this will perform best in low to moderate humidity conditions. How to activate, simply fill the vest with water, and depending on the conditions, we have gotten up to 3 days of cooling. Here's just a screenshot of two of our dry evaporative vests. So we have a zipper option as well as an elastic option. And you can see there that easy activation, just fill that vest with water. Our last major technology, which really is going to be our most universal solution, I say that this one is agnostic of all conditions. So humidity is not a factor. This can be used indoors, in confined spaces, under protective layers like Tyvek suits or coveralls. That's going to be phase change. So phase change is formulated to stay at 64 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius. So typically what people say when they encounter this technology is, oh, it looks like an ice pack, but it doesn't feel like an ice pack. It actually is not an ice pack. So if we think about wearing an ice cube, that would melt within about probably 5 minutes. You can actually burn your skin from applying ice directly on it, and that just sounds kind of uncomfortable. So at 64 degrees, 18 degrees, that is about 30 degrees below your ambient body temperature. So it's going to give a prolonged cooling effect over time. So slowly that radiant heat will be absorbed by the phase change, and it's going to slowly melt that material. To activate these items, simply place them in a cooler of ice water. That's going to be the fastest way, about 10 to 15 minutes there, a fridge or a freezer for a couple of hours. And depending on the item you choose, cooling will last up to 4 hours, depending on the environmental conditions. So here is a peek at our phase change technology. Something I'm just going to highlight on this screen here. I speak with people on the front lines using this technology. We really utilize the voice of the customer as we do product development. You know, who else would know better than the people out there every day, knowing and explaining what issues that they are facing? So with phase change, ultimately, people really, really like phase change. The two things I was hearing is that it's really heavy and really expensive. So this summer, we launched our 6210 phase change cooling vest. You can see in the top left corner there. What's great about this option, as you can see on the screen, all the other phase change packs that I have today require a pack and a vest to put the packs into. The 6210 does not require a fabric vest. This actually can just be worn as you see it on the screen here. The other great thing about this is one size fits most. This has been tested on size extra small up to 4XL. So that means less inventory to manage, less SKU management. This is also much easier to clean as well. So you don't have to wash a vest and then, hand wash the packs, just one thing to wash. So we offer a number of options within this lineup. There will be trade-offs. If you want that lighter weight cooling vest, your duration of cooling may be slightly shorter than some of our heavier packs. That last category in our Chill It series is going to be our hydration products. So again, no surprise, hydration, hydration, hydration is called out all the time by OSHA. We know that this is critically important to helping prevent heat stress. So we have options under that lineup as well. So we have a lot of workers working in very remote job sites. Maybe there's not access to water, or maybe they're, climbing a tower. They're up at heights. They can't be coming back down to grab water all the time. We have a few hydration packs in our lineup, as well as all the accoutrement, all the cleaning accessories, replacement parts that you could need for those packs. We also sell water bottles, and we sell coolers. So we sell a smaller personal cooler, 17 quart, as well as a larger 48 quart cooler. These are also both rated to 300 pounds, so they can be used as a seat as well. One last exciting product development we have in our lineup is going to be our job site fan. So job site fans, we see these, across the market today. Typically you need a tool battery. So a DeWalt tool battery, a Milwaukee tool battery, something along those lines to run the fan. This fan actually features an internal rechargeable battery. So you can use it actually while it's plugged in and charging. Runtime on this is 12 hours on low, that is more than a full shift, 5 hours on high. Multiple ways to use this, hang this, mount this. A super strong magnet is on the bottom of this fan, so that can be, magnetized to a tent that you're using or something along those lines. We have a very strong clamp as well, and a nail hang hole. So plenty of options to utilize this fan. Now I could talk for many hours, and I have talked for many hours about cooling PPE. So this is really, scratching the surface today. I just wanted to highlight, we're constantly working on development. We're constantly talking with people on the front lines. Hey, what are some of the issues that you are facing and how can we help prevent those? So a big thing that we get asked frequently is, hey, I'm new to cooling, I'm new to safety, we don't even know where to start. So we introduced a prevention station kit this year. So that features that tent for some shade, that fan to get airflow going, 6 cooling towels, our sizeless phase change vest, and a cooler to activate everything. Maybe you're saying, okay, well, my crew is much smaller. I don't need, a tent. I don't need all that. So we introduced a smaller recovery kit as well. We are always trying to be proactive when it comes to heat stress. We're trying not to be reactionary. However, we know that this is not reality. We have a lot of people that unfortunately get to those later stages of HRIs, heat-related illnesses. So we have a recovery kit, features that phase change vest, 2 cooling towels, and a cooler to activate everything. One other group of products that I want to highlight that was launched this summer and are already doing very, very well, great user feedback, is going to be our new hard hat cooling accessories. So you can see there 66, 11, 12, and 13. 3 different options that can help outfit your PPE that you are probably already required to wear. So the great thing about these items, they come as a 3-pack. So for instance, if you order the 6611, you'll get 3 sweatbands, 1 to have on, 1 to be washing, 1 replacement. Same goes for the other models there. So we have a lot of heat stress specific resources to help keep you on top of planning and training. We have a lot of different topics that we talk about. We mitigate a lot of risks at Ergodyne. We are a full service PPE supplier. We are always happy to be a resource for training. We do a ton of blogs, videos, podcasts. We have a ton of programs that are suited for distributors, for safety professionals, and for end users. So this is a very complex topic that we've talked about today. We have a lot of great resources on our website that really boil them down to some easy talking points, great graphics that you can share with your end users, and just really great way to keep yourself updated on, what does heat stress look like? What compliance updates are we looking at? What does regulation look like? So with that, I will open it up for questions.
Perfect, Lexi. There's a lot of pretty cool, innovative things coming out of Ergodyne. I'm excited to see. You said Florida, and I immediately said, great, awesome. I need all of that just for the day-to-day stuff. All right, so now is questions time. There were a few questions that came in that you did answer, so I want to give you a huge shout out that you were very informative throughout the webinar. A lot of FR rated questions, and it looks like that was available. A few people are asking if they would be able to get the slides available to them so that they can share them out and start encouraging those heat stress conversations. Looks like Lexi is saying yes, we can send that out to you as well as the recorded webinar in a few days. And then another question was, is there any other information or resources that are quick downloads or some handouts or something they can print out, have on the job site? What can they do there?
Absolutely. So we have a very robust and awesome marketing team here. As you can see, from how my slide deck looks, I wouldn't be able to make it look that pretty. They do a ton of resources. If you go onto our website, ergodyne.com, there is specifically a resources and documents tab. So I would definitely encourage, we have a lot of just one-pagers, PDFs, quick takes on how technologies work, all that sort of thing. Really, really easy for people to just download, print it out, send it to your customer. Easy, digestible resources.
Perfect. We love that. And as Lexi said, head over to the website because there's a ton of resources there. And like she said, it's really digestible, easy to break down. So make sure that you're checking those out. Now, as someone that lives in Canada, I know the answer to this, but there's a person asking, is this available in Western Canada?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. I have the cooling sleeves, I have the cooling towels. We're very familiar with Ergodyne's cooling options. So I get your hands on them. They're so helpful. I've even used the cooling towel with my dog. She's a big fan. So make sure that you're reaching out there. That looks like it's it for questions for now because, like I said, I think you did a really good job of keeping everything succinct but really informative. So before we wrap it up today, Lexi, is there anything you want our audience to keep top of mind or take away from today so that they can be successful in keeping their heat stress down?
I would just kind of reiterate that point of whether a federal standard passes or not, we know that this is an issue. We know we need to be protecting our workers. And again, it goes far outside of workers. I could go outside today and, the temperature could spike and I could experience heat stress. We all can experience this. So it goes far, far beyond just workers. So that's kind of my parting words. Again, don't be embarrassed about saying, hey, I need to take 5, I need to cool down, I need to drink some water. There is no shame in that. Again, there wouldn't be stigma around, getting your hand caught in a machine or something along those lines. So that's what I'll just say is, this is serious, and don't ever feel, any sort of way about saying, I just need to take a break and cool down.
Fantastic. We did have one more question come in. They want to know your insight on the PVA fabric. How does it work?
Yeah, so PVA, polyvinyl alcohol, it essentially is a sponge. So it's going to hold on to water for longer than, a cotton or a polyester or something along those lines. And it's going to just slowly absorb that heat from the body and then evaporate that heat off of our body. So to activate the PVA, when it's dry, it's actually kind of crispy, crunchy, like a chamois almost. So once you get it wet, it'll soften up. Always encourage everybody to make sure we're washing those materials frequently. We don't want to just keep reactivating with the sweat that we have on our body. Machine washable, no dryer, just hang dry those. So again, when they're dry, they'll be crispy, crunchy. When they're wet and activated, they will be soft and cool.
Perfect. And another question, do these materials work even in low air movement?
So some are going to perform better than others. Again, we utilize evaporation pretty frequently. Again, that's just taking that heat off of our body. And if the air is very humid or the air is very stagnant, it just has a harder time radiating off of our body. So that's where that phase change stuff comes in. PVA can definitely still work in some of these, higher humidity environments or low airflow environments. It's just kind of that sentiment again. You might have to get it wet more often. It might not feel as cold as, in a drier climate or something with airflow. So that's just something, again, it's very preference based as well. Always encourage everybody, if you haven't had the opportunity to touch these things, try them out in the field. Really, these things kind of speak for themselves if you've gotten the opportunity. Obviously, Samantha, you are a champion of our gear.
Absolutely.
And the good thing, or maybe the bad thing, is workers tend to love our stuff so much that it walks off the job site and it goes from workday to weekend. So if that's any anecdote, it's people really love it, and people don't want to look dorky wearing their PPE, and we really take a lot of pride in our designers that we have on our team. We want to make PPE look cool, and obviously in cooling, I'm trying ultimately to cool people down, but it also helps, um, increase adoption of actually wearing the PPE if you don't look like a dork. So we um, definitely take that into plans when we're doing designs for new solutions.
Oh, 100%. And I totally understand why it's walking off the job site. But I will say this, if you love it so much that you're taking it home, absolutely get to, because you're going to want it at
Mhm.
work. You're going to want it at home. You're going to want it in both places. So yes, bringing it home is nice, but make sure that you have it at both places. You're going to need
Yep,
it at both places.
exactly.
All right. Well, Lexi, a huge shout out to you and Ergodyne for the great work that you're doing in keeping our bodies safe, our workplaces safe. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to AD Safety Network for allowing you to be here. And of course, I want to thank our audience and our safety professionals because without them, none of this would be possible. So thanks again. Take care. Stay safe. Remember, prevention is important. So keep an eye on that body temp. Bye, everyone.